Good morning.
Morning, Susan. This is Brandon. Or was that Susan? Just to make sure.
Yes, yes.
Wow.
Are we ready to open the meeting, Brandon?
Yeah, we got Randy, Oscar, and Ken already on the line, and Bethany.
Great, thank you.
I don't know if you saw my email. The AGP just asked that we let them know when you're about to start.
Okay, and so go ahead and give them the signal. We're about to start. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you give me the cue?
He just texted me and said he's ready to go. So sounds like we're good.
Okay. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the March 26, 2020 Council meeting, Delta Stewardship Council. Thank you for joining us and experiencing the council meeting remotely by webcast. Let's start with establishing a quorum with a roll call. Let's
Fiorini here.
Weinberg here.
Good morning.
Villegas here.
And with that, Maria? Okay, well, we have a quorum. We are adjourning into closed session. We anticipate returning from closed session at about 10:30. We are now adjourning to closed session. Thank you. Takahashi, Chair of the Delta Stewardship Council. For those who are already on, I ask that you mute your phone. So we are reconvening the Delta Stewardship Council meeting. Reconvening from closed session. I have nothing to report from closed session. We'll reestablish a quorum. I will call each council member's name to limit speaking over each other, and let me know, council members, after I call your name, that you are here. Judge Frank Damrell. Okay, Judge may not be on yet. Randy Fiorini.
I'm here. I'm sorry. I had it on mute.
Oh.
I'm here.
Hi, Judge. Okay. Randy Fiorini. Okay, we'll move on to Council Member Mike Gatto.
I'm here.
Thank you, Mike. Council Member Maria Marani.
I'm here, present.
Thanks, Maria. Council Member Oscar Villegas. Might be on mute. Council Member Ken Weinberg.
Present.
Thank you, Ken. Council Member Randy Fiorini.
Present.
Great. And Council Member Oscar Villegas. Oscar might be on mute. And Susan Tatayan here. We have a quorum. Thank you, everyone, for experiencing our council meeting remotely with us. As a prudent measure to reduce community transmission of COVID-19, we are conducting this meeting remotely. We are webcasting the audio and presentations of this meeting online, and a link can be found on the council's website, which is deltacouncil.ca.gov. Members of the public can also join the conference call by calling 888-251-2909, access code 445-5553. You can also find this information on the Council's homepage. To mitigate background noise, we ask that all of the folks participating today please mute your phone, and especially when not speaking. I will do my best to, under each agenda item, ask for comment, public comment, give time for public comment. Council members, as a reminder, well, everyone participating today in this meeting, you can follow along with the presentations either on webcast or by PowerPoint from the materials that are on the Council's webpage. During the presentations, the presenters will note which slide they are on as they proceed, and you can also watch the feed online with the sound off. Please mute the sound from your computer if you are also phoning in. Otherwise, we get feedback. A link to the webcast can be found again on the Council's homepage. The two presentations for today's meeting can be found at the Delta Council meetings website under deltaCouncil.ca.gov/council-meetings under the March 26, 2020 Council meeting drop-down. For members of the public interested in providing public comment, please send an email version of a blue card to our Council clerk. The email address is engage@deltacouncil.ca.gov. Please be sure to note your name and the agenda item that you wish to speak on. Also, please note if you wish to speak on the phone or would like the clerk to read your comment. I will ask the clerk for comments in the order they are received, just as we do at our council meetings. Please be courteous during this process. We really appreciate your patience. And thank you to all who are attending remotely. This is an unprecedented situation, and we're all working to make this meeting a success. So with that, on to agenda item 5, adoption of the February 27 meeting summary.
Move.
Any discussion?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I've got one comment on that,
Okay.
just a request. It's under item 8, the lead scientist report. The last paragraph, it says, during the lead scientist report, Councilmember Weinberg provided a map depicting potable water reuse projects in California. Could we just have provided a map developed by the Water Reuse Association?
Yes.
Yeah, it wasn't my map. Water Reuse Association, California section.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification, Ken.
No, thank you. And I'll second Frank's motion.
Okay. Any further discussion?
This is Bethany. We'll need to amend the motion, the initial motion, because of Councilmember Weinberg's amendment. So it would be the meeting summary as amended with the Water Reuse Association amendment.
I move with the amendment.
Second.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Bethany. Council members, let me call each council member name to take the vote.
Is there any public comment?
One second,
Rita, do we?
check. No public comment on this item.
Great. Then we'll proceed with the vote. Councilmember Damrell.
Aye.
Councilmember Fiorini.
Aye.
Councilmember Gatto.
Aye.
Councilmember Miranian.
Aye.
Councilmember Villegas.
Aye.
And Councilmember Weinberg.
Aye.
And Councilmember Tatayan, aye. The meeting summary with the amendment is adopted. On to agenda item 6, Chair's Report. For the Chair's Report this morning, I'd like Amanda Bold to give us a summary of the March 2nd Delta Plan Interagency Implementation Committee meeting. It was a very lively meeting with successful agenda items. Is Amanda on?
I'm here. Can everyone hear me okay?
Great.
Great. Well, good morning, Chair Tatayan and council members. As Chair Tatayan mentioned, we had a DPIC meeting on March 2nd, and we had really robust discussions on the 4 agenda items. The primary focus of the meeting was ecosystem-based management, and we had Jeff Mount from PPIC there to present recent ecosystem-based management recommendations and discussed how DPIC agencies can act now to implement these practices. Ron Meltzer from our staff also provided an overview of the ecosystem amendment and how it promotes an ecosystem-based approach. As a follow-up, we'll be drafting a compendium of current initiatives and programs expected to contribute to ecosystem-based management. Also on the agenda, I presented an update on activities related to the Science Funding and Governance Initiative. The primary activity that I want to mention to all of you is the Science Needs Assessment Workshop. The advanced briefing paper for this workshop has been released. The workshop was originally scheduled for April 27th to the 28th, but not surprisingly, we've postponed it until the fall. In the meantime, we'll be soliciting feedback on the advanced briefing paper and are considering holding a series of virtual brown bags over the coming months on the topics discussed in the briefing paper. We also had an update or a discussion of some current, some critical needs around aquatic weed eradication or containment. Louise Conrad and Dylan Chappell, along with partners from DWR and the Department of Boating and Waterways, discussed recent findings on the control of submerged aquatic weeds and the need for productive strategies moving forward. Following this presentation and discussion, Louise was asked to work with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Department of Boating and Waterways to help facilitate a path forward in addressing these critical needs. So the conversation and really led to the continuing involvement of the science program in continuing to address some of this, the critical work that needs to happen around aquatic weeds. And then finally, Rachel Kloppenstein from our staff and Kelly Bidenwig, a member of the Social Science Task Force, presented the near final recommendations from the Social Science Task Force. And that paper with those final recommendations is being finalized right now and should be out in the next couple of weeks. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you all might have.
Council members, any questions of Amanda?
This is Oscar. It's not a question. This is just more of a compliment, I guess I should say. First of all, thank you, Amanda. The agenda was, you're right, it was very lively. There was a lot of good information. I thought it was certainly one of the more robust and more productive meetings in terms of, weighty, meaty issues that are quite relevant. And so I wanted to just say thank you. I thought it was a great meeting, very engaging.
Thanks.
Thank you, Oscar. Yes, it was a very lively, engaging meeting. There was even laughter, along with some very serious discussion. Well, if there are no other council member questions, are there any comments from the public?
Checking right now. I don't see any new comments.
Okay.
No new comments. Yep.
Thank you, Lita.
Welcome.
Well, then we can close agenda item 6 and move on to agenda item 7, the Executive Officer's Report with Jessica Pearson.
Good morning, Chair and Council members. Can you hear me, Chair?
Yes. Thanks, Jessica.
And thanks to all of those of you who are joining by phone. We appreciate you taking the time to do so. As the Chair stated, these are extraordinary times, so the Council is also doing its part to halt the spread of COVID-19. And as such, there are a couple of updates that I'd like to provide on Council operations. First, based on state and local guidance, we have closed our office in Sacramento and updated our website accordingly with this information. However, all staff are working remotely and are available to assist the public during business hours. If anyone needs to contact staff at the Council and they need help finding the right contact or just for general inquiries, they're encouraged to email hello@deltacouncil.ca.gov to be directed to the appropriate staff person. I want to especially thank our Council IT team, who essentially moved our entire agency to remote capability in about less than 10 days. It was really commendable work to keep our staff safe and keep the public safe. Second, we have shifted our public meeting formats, as you have noticed, to be fully remote until further notice. Members of the public will always be able to observe remotely via WebEx or webcast, and or participate remotely through emailing engage@deltacouncil.ca.gov to provide comment, or by calling the number provided for each meeting or event. I encourage those who are interested in observing and participating in our public meetings to sign up for our mailing list on our website if you have not already, or to consistently check our website, where we will always post up-to-date information and updates for our public meetings, including any updates for how to participate with specific phone numbers or email addresses. This information will also be distributed through our social media as new information becomes available. So we ask for everyone's patience as we inevitably encounter a few technological difficulties at first, but fortunately we've got a little bit of experience with webcasting and WebExing, and so hopefully all goes smoothly. Lastly, on that note, I just want to thank the Council members for their support and all of Council staff for their professionalism and perseverance during this time. I'm very proud. A couple other updates. As a reminder, a draft of the Council's public participation plan is available for public review and comment through March 31st. There was a presentation by Brandon Chapin of our meeting services team at our February meeting. The draft is available on the Council's website, and comments, once again, can be sent to engage@deltacouncil.ca.gov. I want to acknowledge those members of the public who have been participating in recent outreach webinars and providing us with thoughtful feedback. The fourth and final public brown bag presentation and interview for the position of Delta Lead Scientist is scheduled for this coming Monday and Tuesday. The brown bag will occur Monday at 9:15 a.m. I'm going to repeat that, 9:15 a.m., followed by a Q&A session open to members of the public, and then that session is expected to end around 11:15 a.m. Anyone can observe and participate via WebEx, and all details are on our website under the Events Calendar menu, which is accessible from the front page. Please note that this brown bag begins earlier than the others, as we are trying to accommodate a different time zone for our candidate, Dr. Laurel Larson, who's currently in Finland. The Council sent one comment letter since the February board meeting. A reminder to those joining by phone that the Council posts all outgoing correspondence on our website. On February 28th, the Council sent a letter to Reclamation District Number 3 in the Delta regarding the initial study mitigated negative declaration for the Grand Island Levee Erosion Repair Project. The project addresses critical erosion of the levee, bank loss, and waterside instability. The project is to place rock on the water side of the Grand Island levee and restore riparian habitat on the water side. The letter states that the project appears to be a covered action and describes the Delta Plan regulatory policies that may apply. It also encourages early consultation with our staff. I do want to note that the comment deadline for the Department of Water Resources Delta Conveyance project on their Notice of Preparation document was delayed. It was originally March 20th, and they have delayed that comment period for now. It ends April 17th. We've had no new covered action filings since we last met. And quickly in personnel announcements, Byron Riggs joined the Delta Science Program's Collaborative Science and Peer Review Unit as their new 2020 Sea Grant Fellow. He was most recently with San Francisco State Estuary and Ocean Science Center. He's also been involved with Environmental Law Alliance Worldwide, where he reviewed environmental impact assessments and free trade agreements for implications to marine resources. So we're excited to have Byron join our team. The Outreach Highlights Report and Active Projects lists are available in your board packets and online for public access. Additionally, this month we have included a written legal update rather than an oral legal update, and we also have a written legislative update. The legislature in California has adjourned until mid-April. So with that, I want to continue on to item 7C, but I'll pause to see if there's any questions so far. Hearing none, we can continue to consideration of a contract with the U.S. Geological Survey to fund Operation Baseline Science Investigations. This item is a request for your approval to enter into a contract with the USGS for 2 science investigations related to the effects on the delta of the major upgrade to the Sacramento Regional County Sanitation District's wastewater treatment plant. The multi-billion-dollar public works project is designed to result in a 99% reduction in ammonia discharged into the delta. The proposed contract for these 2 studies is for up to $943,645. Joining us on the phone in support of this item are Deputy Executive Officer Louise Conrad and Senior Environmental Scientist Dylan Stern. So at this point, I will turn it over to Dylan Stern, who will present some slides on the webcast. And as a reminder, this is for item C for those following the board packet. And for board members, a copy of the slides presented were provided via email on March 25th. Dylan, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you. Are my slides going to be pulled up here? Or? There is a tiny bit of a delay, Dylan. It should be up in a second. Cool. No, thank you. Great. Well, good morning, Council Chair Tatayan and Council members. My name is Dylan Stern with the Delta Stewardship Council, and I'm here to present Operation Baseline 2.0. Next slide, please. So today I'm excited to introduce to you the initiative called Operation Baseline and provide an update on previous Operation Baseline work. Then I will go over the recent science program effort to continue Operation Baseline, which we are calling Operation Baseline 2.0, and also 3 new projects that we are recommending for funding. Please advance to the 2 slides for me. To the introduction slide.
Dylan, just an FYI, the webcast has a 30-second delay between what you mentioned and what's on the screen.
Okay, no worries. So we'll proceed with the introduction slide. If you're following along. The Sacramento County Regional Sanitation District, or Regional SAN, wastewater treatment plant, which is shown on the slide, is undertaking a $1.7 billion infrastructure improvement project called EcoWater. By 2021, this will result in the largest change in recent history to nutrient dynamics in the Sacramento River and therefore in the Delta. Over 10 years ago, new science suggested that excess nutrients in treated wastewater flowing into the Sacramento River could be linked to the decline of Delta smelt and other native fishes. This prompted the Central Valley Regional Water Quality Control Board to issue a new wastewater discharge permit, and the Operation Baseline initiative that I will present today is an effort to help test this idea and to learn more about the Delta. Everyone wants to know how the upgrade will benefit. Yeah.
Hi, this is Susan Tatayan. I'm just checking in to see if the slide that we're looking at is what you want us looking at this time.
Absolutely, the introduction slide, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so everyone really wants to know how the upgrade will benefit the Delta, and as 2021 rapidly approaches, this is our very last opportunity to establish the before conditions. So in carrying out the Delta Science Program's mission to provide the best possible scientific information to inform decision-making in the Delta, the former lead scientist, Cliff Dahm, initiated an effort that highlighted the importance of establishing baseline data in addition to the ongoing regular monitoring so that we can definitively answer key questions about the effects of the upgrade. Next slide, please. I'm going to briefly go over previous Operation Baseline work. The contracts awarded by the Council in 2017 have already enabled major advancements in the way we study nutrients, food webs, and sediments in the dynamic Delta. And if you want to read a little more about this, you could see Attachment 1 in the meeting materials. The Council awarded about $1.2 million for multiple projects to begin the work under the Operation Baseline initiative. One of the projects produced a conceptual framework that organizes ideas about how to reduce nutrients in the Delta might cause changes in the occurrence of harmful algal blooms, excessive growth of invasive aquatic vegetation, and the amount and quality of phytoplankton, or tiny floating algae. Another project tested a new type of sensor that can measure these phytoplankton communities quickly and at the same time as nutrients are measured. An array of water quality sensors was used on a boat and flow-through system to literally map changes in nutrients across the Delta on a fine scale. This was the first time that nutrients in phytoplankton communities were measured together and at an appropriate scale, and it was an important step toward establishing a baseline of the interactions between nutrients and a lower food web. Pictured here on the right, USGS also created a new technology, a really cool technology called benthic flux chamber, to measure the movements of nutrients in and out of the bottom floor of the Delta sediments. Next slide, please. So for Operation Baseline 2.0, the Delta Science Program continued to work to address high-priority data and knowledge gaps through collaborative meetings and by using the new conceptual framework that identified the information needed to answer important questions. Through a targeted funding process, 12 concept proposals or mini-proposals from Delta researchers were received. 8 of those were requested to be developed into full, detailed proposals. They then underwent a robust review process to evaluate the scientific quality and potential management relevance. The Delta Science Program called on academic reviewers from all across the world, agency staff including from Regional SAN and the Central Valley Regional Water Quality Control Board, and internal reviewers from the Delta Science Program. At the conclusion of this process, 4 proposals were eligible for funding. The state water contractors will fund one of those proposals as a result of an ongoing science funding partnership we have with them. Thus, 3 projects were recommended by the lead scientists for council funding. Next slide, please. Now a little bit about the 3 new projects. So these 3 new projects build extensively on previous Operation Baseline work. The first is the USGS contract, the subject of today's action item. It is the largest. This work directly utilizes new technologies developed in the first phase to better understand the fine-scale delta-wide changes in nutrients and resulting shifts in phytoplankton, using a combination of stationary measurements and a boat-based flow-through system. This data can produce powerful maps like the one shown here. Secondly, USGS with the Virginia Institute for Marine Sciences and cooperation with the Department of Water Resources will undertake a modeling effort that ties together enormous data sets on nutrients, invasive aquatic vegetation, and phytoplankton, like the data shown here, which can, for example, advance our understanding and the potential management of the anticipated changes in invasive aquatic vegetation. And the third project will allow BSA Environmental Services to analyze picoplankton samples across the Delta. Currently, there is very little data on the very little phytoplankton, but these guys could actually have a substantial role in the food web. And altogether, these projects will complement existing monitoring and provide valuable insights into the potential impacts of the wastewater treatment plant upgrade that is about to occur. And now I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Chair Tatayan, are there any questions from the council? Or do we have any public comment?
Lita, do we have any?
There's no, sorry, I was on mute. There's no public comment for this item.
Okay. Council members, any discussion or questions on agenda item 7C? The requested action of us is to authorize the executive officer to enter into a new contract with the U.S. Geological Survey for up to $943,645 to continue to study the nutrients.
Recommendation.
Okay.
Madam Chair, Madam Chair, this is Oscar Villegas. I had a quick comment, if I could.
Okay. Go
First
ahead,
of all, I
Oscar.
wanted to thank staff. Yeah, thank you. I wanted to thank staff, first of all, for the work that they've been doing on this. I actually have served on the Regional Sanitation District Board for, goodness, I think it's going to, I venture to say somewhere in the order of around 15 years now. So I'm pretty intimately familiar with the MPDES permit for discharge and its effluent into the Sacramento River. And I think the baseline science program makes all the sense in the world to continue to kind of monitor what impacts the Regional Sanitation District is having on all the range of measures that have been identified. You know, this is a significant investment by the district. As was mentioned earlier, the $1.7 billion capital investment is the largest in the Sacramento region to ensure that we're good stewards of our precious resource. And so I look forward to helping in any way I can, and certainly monitoring and observing the results of the initiative and the studies that are ongoing, because I think this is we're all in this together. And I think I just want to underscore the importance of the Regional Sanitation District Board and its efforts to be a good steward and to do the right thing by investing, as I said, is the biggest, single largest capital investment in the Sacramento region at nearly almost $2 billion to its ratepayers to make sure that we're doing the right thing.
Great. Thank you, Oscar.
Yes, thank you, Oscar. That is, we very much appreciate your comments, and I just wanted to let you know that we've been in close contact with the staff at Regional SAN, and they've given us a lot of input on the priorities for research and for Operation Baseline. So we definitely have been coordinating with them to move forward these Operation Baseline projects.
And can I just follow up, John? Can I make a request? And there's no timeline at all. I just throw it out there, but I think it would be really helpful that, as lead scientist, whether it's in your current role or whether it's in the near future, that there be a brief presentation just to let the district board know precisely the coordinated efforts that are occurring as it relates to this initiative. I think at some point there ought to be a presentation. I'd be happy to help in that way.
Councilman, I
I just wanted to add something, and if I may, this is Maria Maranian. The city of LA has, this huge plant, as you know, Hyperion, that does all the wastewater treatment, and it's run by LA Sanitation, City of Los Angeles. And the mayor has had a declaration that, we have to not zero discharge in the ocean by, I think it's 2035, something like that, like zero. And as a result of that, the Hyperion has to embark on a whole re-engineering of the existing facility that they have in order to create, tertiary recycled water. And then it's a joint effort between DWP and Hyperion. Hyperion recycles the water. The minute it's recycled, that it's owned by Department of Water and Power. So although the plant is owned by LA San, City of LA, the water is going to be owned by DWP. So it's going to be a joint effort, mostly funded by DWP, Department of Water and Power. Similar, it's in the vicinity of $2 billion, and still it's in more embryonic, phases, because it's still an imagining or visioning of what this project is going to be. A lot of public meetings are held, and then the engineers are working with a little pilot program that looks into sequencing, timing, spatial analysis, capacity analysis. So it would be really great, as Councilman Villegas mentioned, if there's any presentation at some point or summary or some reference to what the project is exactly going to do, this enhancement. I mean, I conceptually understand what it is, but, or if you could point it to some literature I can look into to do a comparative analysis in my own head, in my own mind.
We can provide some more background information, at least on the regional sands effort for you, so that you can see that as a comparison.
That'll be great. I appreciate it.
Okay, council members, we have before us Council Member Fiorini made the motion of the council authorizing the executive officer to enter into this new contract with USGS for up to $943,645. Any council member offer a second?
Second.
Council member Damrell, second. Is there any public comment?
There's no public comment on this item.
Okay, then we'll proceed with the vote. Roll call. Council member Damrell.
Aye.
Council member Fiorini.
Aye.
Council member Gatto.
Aye.
Council member Maranian.
Aye.
Council member Villegas.
Aye.
Council member Weinberg.
Aye.
And this is Council member Tatayan. Aye. And staff recommendation is approved.
Thank you so much, Chair, and I want to express my appreciation to Dylan Stern for such a clear presentation. That was very helpful, Dylan.
Thank you for your
Moving
time.
on to
appreciate it.
item 7D. 7D is a request for your approval of an amendment to an existing contract with UC Davis that seeks to analyze and synthesize existing data sets of native fish movement in Central Valley rivers. And this is to be done in order to gain new insights into the factors that impact these movements. Specifically, this amendment would allow for the hiring of a postdoctorate at the University of Maryland to integrate about a decade of these fish movement data sets in order to understand how fish respond to water operations, such as state and federal pump operations in the South Delta, and changing environmental conditions. The amendment reallocates approved funds to accommodate this hiring decision and does not change the total cost or term of the contract. Louise Conrad, our Deputy Executive Officer for Science, is available on the call to answer any questions should there be any. Otherwise, I ask for your support.
Madam
I
Chair.
would move the item.
Madam
there
Chair, this is Ken.
Okay. Hi,
Yeah,
Ken.
I'm sorry. Just a question for Louise. Just looking at the use of this data, would this, maybe that would sort of clarify a little bit that this data would be used in, or would it be used in sort of feeding into operational decisions on the water project so that, maybe they can be a little more refined or accurate in how they operate the pumps? Is that kind of one of the end uses of this data?
Hello, this is Louise. Yes, that is one of the uses of this data. One of the goals with this project is to, instead of looking at one data set at a time, look at all of them and then get a bigger picture and more robust picture of how fish populations respond to changes in water operations. So yes.
No, so just sort of the customers of the data would be sort of the wildlife agencies, the Fish and Wildlife, and the contractors, DWR.
Contractors, DWR, the Bureau of Reclamation as well.
Okay, thanks. No, I just wanted to kind of understand that, or have everybody
Absolutely.
understand what the use of this was. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I will move the staff recommendation unless there's other questions or discussion.
Second.
Okay, I think Oscar earlier moved the staff recommendation, so I'll take the second from Councilmember Weinberg. And is there any public comment?
There's no public comment on this item.
Okay, thank you, Lita. And we'll proceed with the vote, and rather than having me say council member each time, I think I will just call your surname. So we'll proceed with the vote. Damrell.
Aye.
Fiorini.
Fiorini, aye.
Gatto.
Otto, aye.
Maranian.
Maranian, aye.
Diegas.
Aye.
Weinberg.
Weinberg, aye.
Tatayan, aye. And staff recommendation is approved.
Okay, thank you for that. Moving on to item 7E. This is a request to approve an amendment to an existing and related contract with UC Davis that supports the establishment and maintenance of a network of stations to detect and monitor spring run Chinook salmon smolts as they move through the Delta. We are proposing that the original contract amount be amended with an additional $140,277,000, raising the total to approximately $1.8 million. These additional funds will allow the researchers to complete the salmon tracking research with tagging, release, and survival tracking of the smolts through critical junctures in the Delta that have high mortality rates. These junctures are often referred to as hotspots. This knowledge about hotspots and salmon movement can improve the way that the state and others manage for these fish through restoration investments and water operations. Specifically, this type of information can be useful in guiding the San Joaquin River Chinook Salmon Reintroduction Program and in informing operations of the South Delta pumps. This funding was part of a Proposition 1 proposal that was originally selected and funded by the Council on Science program in 2016. And once again, Deputy Executive Officer for Science, Louise Conrad, is on the phone should there be any questions. With that, I ask for your support.
Any questions, council members?
Tierney offers the staff recommendation.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Fiorini, second by Damrell. Any public comment?
There's no public comment for this item.
Okay. All right, then we'll proceed with the vote. Damrell.
Aye.
Fiorini.
Tierney, aye.
Gatto.
Gatto, aye.
Maranian.
Marani and I.
Villegas.
Aye.
Weinberg.
Weinberg, aye.
Tatayan, aye. Staff recommendation is approved.
Thank you so much.
Susan?
Thank you for all your support.
Susan, this is Randy. These three actions we've taken funding these science projects are really important, and I want to thank Jessica and staff for all the work they've done, John Calloway and his folks in preparing to bring all this to us. I think this is worthy of additional communications to the public, particularly this last action that we took in keeping with the recent decisions that the Fish and Game Commission has taken. So if there are not any plans to offer public communication related to the steps we've taken, I would sure encourage us to do so.
I would totally
Thank
agree.
you, Randy.
Yeah, this is John. Thank you very much, Randy. We definitely have been planning to spread the word about Operation Baseline, but I think that's a very good suggestion to also highlight the role of the acoustic tagging and better understanding of predation issues.
I think, this is Oscar, Madam Chair. I think it lends itself actually, in part, if not directly, to the public outreach draft document that's being circulated right now. I think this is one more opportunity for us to sort of make sure that the public is aware of what we're doing, not simply when we're trying to get their opinions about particular things, but when we're actually actively, proactively taking steps like we just have in a couple of the last two items of things that are important to the public.
Mm-hmm. I agree. So, Jessica, it sounds as though we ought to consider special highlighting of these actions and in some way broadcasting it.
We can certainly make that happen. I think we've got a lot of staff who are excited to talk about these investments and how they're relevant to the challenges in the Delta today.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone, for all your hard work. This is phenomenal. Continuing to push the envelope on science in the Delta.
So if I may, just to wrap up my report, looking ahead to the remainder of the agenda, after a brief lead scientist report, we'll be asking the Council to take action on the Delta Levy investment strategy rulemaking process. We're asking for a pause in that rulemaking process, and there'll be an explanation and a presentation as to why that is, and also asking for approval of an associated resolution and a contract in support of the remaining work to be done, both on the levy investment strategy and on the Council's ecosystem amendment over the coming 12 to 18 months. So with that, I conclude my executive officer's report.
Thank you, Jessica. Okay, on to agenda item 8. Dr. John Calloway.
Great. Good morning, Chair Tatayan and council members. First, thank you very much for your support for the Operation Baseline projects and for the amendment for the acoustic tagging work. As you all noted, I think it really is a major step forward. And Councilmember Villegas, I don't think I got back to you that I would be happy to present to the Regional Sands Board on Operation Baseline, so I will follow up with you on that. And I also wanted to highlight and thank Dylan Stern for his work presenting that, as well as an enormous amount of work that he's put into Operation Baseline projects. So I'm going to just very briefly go over the items that are in your packet. There are 3 articles that are summarized there. One highlights the value of the San Francisco Estuary and Watershed Science Journal. That's the open access journal that the council supports. And as this article identifies, there's growing use and interest in the journal with an increasing number of downloads and citations of articles from the journal. So we included this in part because the contract renewal for the support of the journal will be coming to the council soon. So I think it really highlights the benefits that that journal provides. There's two other articles. One is a really interesting summary of long-term precipitation patterns that Jessica Pearson featured in one of her weekly updates to you and that Councilmember Villegas had asked about. And this paper identifies the importance of considering not just our recent historical data, but much longer-term historical data on precipitation patterns, and they highlight in a range of different watersheds with a focus on the watersheds that support Southern California. And they do that using tree ring data to understand that longer-term data gives a much better understanding of potential variability of future rainfall coming forward. And then the last article summarizes data on a group of fish species that we don't really think about, lampreys. And this was done by Pascal Gertler, a science program staff, recent addition to the science program staff, along with some of her colleagues. There's a visual abstract for this article that highlights the importance of temperature on lamprey abundance or lamprey distribution, as well as large differences in habitat use within different regions within the Delta. And we included this really just to highlight that this sort of synthetic analysis really identifies the value of the use of historical data to provide insights on factors that are affecting native species. We want to think about a broad range of native species within the Delta. And then last, there are two recent events that are summarized there. The Estuarine Connectivity Symposium that we featured in February, which had a wide range of discussions on connectivity of physical issues, such as flow and sediment transport, as well as connectivity for fish, including salmon and nutria and other species. Work is already underway to put together a synthesis from this symposium, and it's being led by Annika Keeley from the science program. There also is a video available of the full symposium if you're interested at the council webpage. And then we recently held a workshop on integrated modeling to discuss a synthesis report on modeling efforts in the Delta. And that report was funded by the science program. The workshop was an opportunity to discuss the findings from that report. We had about 30 to 40 participants from a broad range of agencies, academia, and consulting. We got a lot of valuable input on priorities to move modeling forward, to building on the input that came from the report. And staff, Ben Gasky is leading this effort, and he's taking the input from the report as well as the workshop, and will be developing recommendations to implement improved modeling in the Delta. We will bring that to the council as well as to DPIC in the near future. And then last, I encourage you to look over the By the Numbers handout for March that was put together by State Fellow Kate Mellinson. You'll notice a slight increase in precipitation and snowpack, but still relatively low values compared to historic averages overall. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Any questions for Dr. Callaway, council members? Well, hearing none, thank you very much, John.
Certainly, thank you.
Is there any public comment?
There's no public comment for this item.
Thank you, Lita. We'll move on to agenda item 9, Delta Levy's investment strategy regulation update, and our Deputy for Planning, Jeff Henderson, will be leading this discussion.
Hi, Chair. Actually, this is Jessica Pearson. I'm going to kick it off before I hand it over to Jeff, who will present some slides on this item. So this is item 9, as the Chair stated. The copies of the slides, once again, council members, were made available to you in the March 25th email. They are also online with the board materials for today's meeting. As I mentioned in my February Executive Officer's report, when the legislature asked the council to develop an evidence-based strategy to guide state investments in the Delta's levee system, no one thought that was going to be a straightforward task. Council members and staff together have been diligently working with partners to develop the Delta Levees Investment Strategy, or DLIS as we affectionately call it, over the course of several years, and we've checked off some significant milestones along the way. As part of developing DLIS, council staff, supported by a consultant, developed a decision support tool. This is an analytical tool designed to identify flood risk to state interests that the council selected on Delta Islands and tracts. The tool was used to create maps that helped inform the council's decision in 2018 to update its Delta Plan Regulatory Policy RRP1, or Risk Reduction Policy 1. The risk maps produced by the tool are based on Delta levee and island floor elevation data from 2007, which was the best available information at that time. However, as Jeff and others will describe, there has been new information brought to our attention regarding elevation imaging of the Delta and Sassoon Marsh that warrants consideration. This information has the potential to change outcomes in the DLIS decision support tool, the resulting risk maps, and the priorities that the council assigns to each Delta Island or tract under DLIS. So as a result, staff are going to be recommending that the council withdraw its proposed rulemaking from the Office of Administrative Law and direct staff to evaluate the new information and update the tool accordingly. We would then initiate a new proposed rulemaking at a later date after completing these steps to the satisfaction of the council. So to present additional context on this request and to help members and the public understand how we've come to this recommendation, on the phone we have Jeff Henderson, our Deputy Executive Officer for Planning, Ryan Stambraugh, our Legislative and Policy Advisor, and Aaron Mullen, our Senior Water Resources Engineer in the Planning Division. Jeff?
Thank you, Jessica. Good morning, council members. As Jessica indicated, we'll be providing today an update on the regulatory process associated with the Delta Levees Investment Strategy. I'll be sharing the presentation with both Ryan and Aaron as we progress. And just as a reminder to all, we'll note when we're advancing slides and also make an effort to identify which slide we are on during each progression. So I'm now going to move to slide 2, titled Summary. What we're going to do today is review the background that has brought us to this place with regard to DLIS, the council's authority with regard to setting levy priorities, prior actions taken by the council, and give you an update on the ongoing rulemaking process for amendments to Delta Plan Policy RRP1, which is the location in the Delta Plan where the DLIS is described. We're going to talk about some new information that could impact the estimation of risks to state interests, which is a key component of the DLIS. As Jessica indicated, this is some new light imaging detection and radar, or LIDAR, information for the year 2017 that we have received. And what we need to do is evaluate if that data presents adjusted elevations for levees or island floors that would significantly change the probability of levee failure, and in that regard, change its priority potentially under DLIS. And our request for you today is to withdraw the proposed amendments to Delta Plan Policy RRP1 from rulemaking, and then to direct us to evaluate if the new information could change the prioritization of Delta levees and tracts in the DLIS. And because we need to evaluate this new information, we're indicating that we cannot complete the rulemaking to amend this policy within the required 1-year time period associated with that rulemaking process, thus the need to withdraw the current process. And as Jessica mentioned, a new rulemaking would be undertaken in the near future. And comments that we've received in response to the current rulemaking are being considered by council staff and will be considered in the development of the future rulemaking. So I'm now going to advance to slide number 3, titled Background. As you're aware, the Delta includes more than 1,000 miles, and the Sassoon Marsh includes around 230 miles of levees, most of which were constructed during reclamation. And this levee system reduces flood risk to people, to property, to water supply, and the Delta ecosystem, namely state assets, with regard to what's protected by the levee system. And the Delta levees face varying levels of flood risk. The state provides financial assistance to maintain and improve Delta levees. Failure of those levees could cause catastrophic flooding that would lead to injury, loss of life, and damage to property, infrastructure, and environmental resources that are important to all Californians. And to date, there is no comprehensive strategy with regards to how to prioritize investments in levee rehabilitation and improvements. There are existing programs and processes, but no comprehensive strategy that ties those together against the potential risk of failure of levees in the Delta. Advancing to slide 4, titled Delta Reform Act. The Delta Reform Act directs the council to establish levee investment priorities. This is one of the things that the Act directed the council to proceed with in its enabling legislation. And to be clear, what the statement reads is that the council, in consultation with the Central Valley Flood Protection Board, shall recommend in the Delta Plan priorities for state investment in levee operation, maintenance, and improvements in the Delta, including both levees that are part of the state plan of flood control and non-project levees. So again, the Reform Act directs the council to establish levee investment priorities. Advancing to slide 5, titled Prior Council Actions. In 2013, in adopting the Delta Plan, the plan included policy RRP1, which has since been codified as 23 CCR section 5012. What this did is establish some interim state spending priorities for emergency preparedness, response and recovery, and integrated flood management strategies. It established a set of interim priorities for levee investments that cross 3 benefit categories to accomplish 3 goals, or what we refer to sometimes as the 3x3 matrix that we'll show here in a moment. That policy expects that the Department of Water Resources would balance achievement of the 3 goals over time, year over year, based on levee investment. And it should also be noted that the 2013 Delta Plan committed the council, in addition to adopting these interim priorities, the 2013 Delta Plan committed the council to prepare a risk-based strategy, thus the council's efforts to prepare the Delta levees investment strategy. So again, that was also a recommendation in the 2013 Delta Plan. Advancing to slide 6, also titled Prior Council Action. This slide presents
Jeff,
what I refer to. Yeah.
This is Susan. I'm noticing on the webcast, I don't know that slide 5 appeared, so maybe we should wait a few seconds to get slide 6 caught up with you.
Happy to do so.
Brandon, are you on?
Yes, I'm checking it with AGP at the moment.
Yeah, I was wondering if it was my computer. I did not see slide 5, and I think Jeff is now on slide 6.
Yeah, I'm on 6, and I still see slide 4.
Slide 6 just went up on the webcast, so it should be good.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Shall I proceed, Chair?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Jeff. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. So slide 6 presents the 3x3 matrix that I referred to earlier with the 3 goals, numbered 1, 2, and 3, and the 3 benefit categories for localized flood protection, the levee network, and ecosystem conservation. So this presents for you the sort of balanced priorities that the interim policy seeks to achieve. This is the policy that is essentially being enforced as policy RRP1 today. In other words, when covered actions come before the council, they are demonstrating consistency with this 3x3 matrix. And that is essentially the regulation that is in place today. I'm going to go ahead and advance to slide 7. This is where we're going to transition from myself to Aaron Mullen. Slide 7 is titled Delta Levees Investment Strategy DLIS Process. Go ahead, Aaron.
Thank you, Jeff. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure that I got myself off of mute. Thank you, Jeff, and good morning, council members and members of the public. My name is Aaron Mullen, and I am a senior engineer with the council. Oh, so you have advanced, right? Because I'm on I still see.
Yeah, read from your PowerPoint directly and just go to slide 7.
Yeah, that was my plan. To start, I would like to begin with a brief review of what DLIS is and how it works. I know that Jeff touched on some of this already, so this might seem repetitive, but just bear with us. From 2014 to 2018, the Council developed a comprehensive method to analyze state interests and risks in the Delta. During this process, the Council identified state interests as risk to public safety, property and infrastructure, water supply reliability, the Delta ecosystem, and the unique features of Delta as place. The Council defined risk as the probability of flooding times the consequences. You can think about risk like this. Given the same level of flood protection on 2 islands, an agricultural island that doesn't have any homes or infrastructure is going to have less risk than an island that does have homes or infrastructure. Or given 2 islands with similar assets and populations, but different levee systems, the island that has a robust flood management infrastructure will have less risk than an island with weak levees. The Delta Levee Investment Strategy Decision Support Tool was created to help us understand these relationships and support deliberations about how to prioritize state spending. Okay, advance slide to number 8, titled Prior Council Actions 2018 Delta Plan Amendments. The Council adopted Resolution 2018-1 in April of 2018. The resolution amended Chapter 7 to incorporate DLIS and amend Policy RRP1 to establish DLIS priorities for Delta Islands and tracts, added new terms used in Policy RRP1 to the Delta Plan Glossary, certified an program environmental impact report for the Delta Plan amendments, directed staff to initiate the rulemaking process to amend Section 5012 to implement the amended policy RRP1 and add the new definitions to Section 5001, and directed the executive officer to make non-substantial and technical challenges. Advancing to slide 9, titled Rulemaking Process. In response to the Council's direction, staff initiated the rulemaking process. We filed the Notice of Proposed Rulemaking on July 5th, 2019. This began a 45-day comment period that concluded on August 19th, 2019, followed by a public hearing on August 22nd. It's important to note that rulemaking must finish within 1 year of the filing date. This means that the Council needs to finish its rulemaking process by July 5th, 2020. I will explain the significance of this in a little bit. Since the August hearing, Council staff has reviewed the comments received during this process. Council staff has been working with our partners to address these comments, and all comments received will be considered in the formulation of future rulemaking. Advance to slide 10, new information. In 2019, DWR released new LIDAR imaging data that was collected in 2017. LIDAR, which stands for Light Detection and Ranging, is a remote sensing method that uses light in the form of pulsed laser to measure variable distance to the Earth. DWR uses this method to collect information about the condition of delta levees, including levee heights and estimated elevations of islands and tract floors. The current prioritization is based on similar data that was collected by DWR in 2007. The image on that slide to the right is actually a graphic representation of that data that was collected in 2007. The decision support tool uses levee height information to calculate the probability of flooding. As I discussed earlier, that probability informs our understanding of risk in the delta. If the conditions have substantially changed since 2007, that would have an impact on the risk and could potentially change where the state's priorities are. Okay, advancing to slide 11, titled D-List Process. You might remember this graphic from the hearing back in August. It describes the process that the Council used to develop its prioritization. The LIDAR, shown as an arrow over on the left, is one of the inputs used to calculate the probability of flooding. As I explained before, the probability of flooding is multiplied by the consequence of flooding, and the product is the estimated risk to state interest. The D-List decision support tool generates the prioritization maps that the Council uses in their decision-making process. Advancing to slide 12, titled D-List Tool Next Steps. This graphic lays out the steps needed to do this evaluation. We anticipate that developing new fragility curves using the new LIDAR data will take us into the fall, when we will conduct public outreach. After we work with our stakeholders, we will finalize the curves in the winter of 2021. Once the curves are final, Council staff will rerun the tool to reevaluate state interests in the spring of 2021. Once we have that new analysis, we will bring the new maps back to the Council for your consideration. That concludes my part of the presentation. I will now hand it over to Ryan, who will be discussing the public outreach.
Thanks, Aaron. Good morning, Council members. This is Ryan Stamber, Legislative and Policy Advisor at the Council. Just to kind of pick up where Aaron left off, in recent conversations with interested parties, as well as our partners at DWR and the Flood Board, Council staff has reiterated its commitment to extensive outreach at a number of steps along the way as these draft policy components are further analyzed and developed. We feel as staff, feedback from these groups will be a critical component of this process going forward, particularly on the proposed language, as well as the associated definitions of activities that would be subject to the 3 priority tiers. Once the data has been revised, staff will return to the Council to present findings and to discuss further next steps. Moving on to slide 14, that's entitled Delta Plan Chapter 7. So since the proposed rulemaking is being suggested by staff to be withdrawn as part of today's requested action, staff is the staff recommendation to rescind RRP1 language adopted in 2018 would revert the regulation language to the 2013 version. We feel this is obviously important for public clarity and to avoid any confusion. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Jeff to summarize the staff recommendation.
Thank you, Ryan, and we'll go ahead and advance to slide 15, titled Staff Recommendation. And I am going to go ahead and read this for the record. These are the components in the resolution, the draft resolution that is attached to your staff report, which we are seeking or recommending approval of today. So staff recommends that the council adopt Resolution 2020-01, which again is provided as attachment 1 to your staff report. That resolution would do several things. 1, it would amend Chapter 7 of the Delta Plan to delete text describing DLIS and policy RRP1 and restore text describing these items previously adopted in 2013 but removed from the Delta Plan in 2018. The resolution would also authorize the executive officer to prepare and submit to the Office of Administrative Law a notice of decision not to proceed on proposed rulemaking for Section 5001 definitions and Section 5012 Delta Levies Investment Strategy of Title 23 of the California Code of Regulations, according to Government Code Section 11347. The resolution would also direct council staff to evaluate the new information, the LIDAR information that was discussed in this presentation, to determine if further modifications to Chapter 7 are needed, and to report to the council at a future date. And the resolution would also determine these actions are exempt from environmental review pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA Guidelines Section 15061B3 and 15262. So those are the components of the recommendation that is before the council today. It is staff's recommendation that following discussion, the council approve the recommendation and enable us to continue the evaluation of this data. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. Council members, any questions for Jeff and the team? Well, hearing no questions, do we have any public comment on this item, Lita?
Yes, we have two. Both are going to give verbal comment over the phone. The first up is Gilbert from MBK Engineers.
Okay. Good morning, Gilbert.
Good morning,
Gil?
President Zion. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear from Army Corps of Engineers. I couldn't hear where Gilbert is from.
No.
Oh, go ahead and introduce yourself, Gil.
Yeah. Hi, this is Gilbert Cosio from MBK Engineers. We are reclamation district engineers for about 40% of the entire Delta. Most of our clients are in the North and Central Delta. We have a couple in the South Delta. But thank you for completing this meeting today. You know, with all that's going on, it was kind of questionable, but I think it's important to start talking about GLIS again sooner rather than later. And I want to assure you, out of respect to the council and the staff there, I'm wearing a nice suit and tie that unfortunately aren't going to be able to see, but you know, like I said, out of respect, I'm doing that. And but
I don't remember suits and tie in person.
Anyway, first I want to applaud the staff. Jeff and Ryan, Aaron Mullen, and Andrew Schwartz have been reaching out quite a bit the last few months to understand more about how we deal with things and the levies themselves. So I think what they're recommending here is fantastic to kind of reopen the issue and certainly look at the LIDAR and observe what we've done over the last 3 years on these levies to improve them and hopefully lower the fragility or raise the fragility resistance on these levies. One other item we're working on are 5-year plans that you'll be seeing between now and the end of the year that will help you understand more of how we're interpreting the current status of the levy system, you know, what the kind of standards that they're meeting now that we're redoing our 5-year plans, and what kind of work we plan to do in the future, also to help you understand how we're thinking as far as what's lining up for the future. I think as you're embarking on updating the GLIS and the decision support tool, we'd like to offer a few suggestions might alleviate some of the current concerns we and others have had, starting with the last DLIS development. The first one being the fragility curves you're going to be improving on using the LiDAR data and other data that we can provide and others can provide are based on the drains analysis from 2007, 2008. As you know, that analysis was criticized by myself and others that it was overly conservative as far as seismic issues. It was didn't really understand that the conditions of levees in the delta varies quite a bit, and so by generalizing some of the cross sections and components of levee materials, that again it was kind of overly conservative. So we're finding that this might be a good time to investigate more into what dreams had and what's available now that can improve on those curves. I know the LiDAR data you're looking at will start that. But our suggestion would be to look at all the data that might be out there. I know in 2016, your independent science board had a fantastic workshop on levee forces, both flood and seismic forces. And at that time, we learned a lot about the newest understanding of how seismic forces translate into the delta and therefore the levees. And the USGS, who's been looking at actual monitoring of movement in the delta, presented information that suggested that dreams may have overemphasized or overly estimated the forces on levees during the Napa earthquake by a factor of 4. In addition, the data were presented that the building of toe berms or flattening of slopes, which is what we're doing to meet Bulletin 192-82 requirements, actually adds to post-seismic stability of levees. And what that means is, yeah, they're going to crack and move a little bit, but we know that what's left after an earthquake would be substantial, that we can build on later. These levees are not going to pancake out to nothing. So the key is going to be how to get a better understanding of the effect of toe berms on these levees, and then plan for that earthquake should it come by adding a little more freeboard or whatever it's going to take in addition to toe berms to assure that we have a lot of levee to work on after an earthquake. There's a lot of data out there right now. Some of the data may not have been published, so we have to seek it out from some of the people that have worked on this sort of thing. Another suggestion is, I think Jeff or Ryan mentioned in the presentation that you're going to reach out to the locals. We would really be happy to help you out as soon as possible so we can start talking about some of these issues. I know the last DLIS, the consultant, your staff, did a good job of reaching out. The problem they had was that their hands were a little bit tied due to the fact that they were not allowed to seek out non-published studies and information. And hopefully we can bring some of that to the forefront, and so the new revision of the DLIS would incorporate all the data that's out there. And then finally, our last suggestion is we need to understand how funds are prioritized. At your November meeting, DWR did a good job of presenting how they need to administer funds coming mostly from bond measures, and that it may not have matched up real well the way the DLIS was structured. So I know you're talking to DWR with your MOU group, but another cost share partner are the reclamation districts, so we would be happy to sit down with you and also talk about how we approach cost sharing and how we would prioritize funds versus how it might have been outlined in the original DLIS. That's all I have. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer any.
Thank you, Gail. Council members, are there any questions for Gil Cosio?
Gil, this is Randy. You referenced the DWR report, their annual report that was provided to the council a couple of months ago. at that meeting, we asked them if they were aware of any project submissions for subvention funding that were rejected. They couldn't answer that question. They told us about the ones that were accepted. Are you aware of any projects last year submitting subvention funding requests that were rejected?
No, all of ours were accepted. Every time there might be some minor details that might be rejected, but it's very minor. The actual projects we did were all accepted.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the council members?
Nope.
Gail, go ahead. So this is Susan, Gail. I just have one question. The information not yet published, the data, do you have a sense of the magnitude of the unpublished data? How much? I'm just kind of wondering the level of effort needed to delve into the data you're speaking about.
I don't have a good feel. I know that our geotech engineers, as they write up reports now, are making comments in all our reports on how our levee improvements are affecting the ability to withstand forces during an earthquake. I'd have to kind of go through some of those, and I know that DWR and others have done studies over the years that may not have been published. I know early on in the subventions program, we asked DWR back in 1989, I think, okay, what do we need to do to meet Bulletin 19282? And they sent us over an internal memo that, as far as I know, was never published, and they kind of described what their thinking was with the toe berms and flatter slopes. At the very end, it said something to the effect that these aren't seismic designs, and we know that flattening slopes and building toe berms does help in resisting earthquake forces. So I know it's out there, just I don't know exactly how much effort that would be to pull it out.
Okay, thank you. Well, then are there any other questions for Gil Cosio, council members? Okay, thank you very much, Gil, for taking the time to be with us today.
You're welcome.
So, Lita, we have another public comment on agenda item 9.
Yes, OSHA, please step up. It's your turn.
Good morning. This is OSHA Meserve. Can you all hear me?
Yes. Good morning, OSHA.
Hi. I'll offer comments on behalf of local agencies of the North Delta, and obviously I work with a lot of different interests in the Delta, and I think in general, I think Gilbert gave you some really important points, and I hope that those are followed up on. And I think in general we support the proposed action. We had been dissatisfied with the approach in DLIS, and so we're pleased to see that there will be some opportunity to improve upon that approach under the pathway being laid out by staff today. I think there's an interest, in trying to see if we can go back into the decision support tool in particular to do some things to make it better and more usable for promoting flood control in the Delta. So I think there's more to be done, and I hope more will be done besides updating the LIDAR data. I think in particular, we're very concerned about the prior listing of priorities being that rigid list. And even though it may be true that GWR provided funding even if certain things weren't on that list, I don't think it points to a usefulness of a list if it has to be overridden all the time. And things are so dynamic in the Delta with respect to storms and other changing conditions that a rigid list I don't think is appropriate. or helpful or required by 85306, which talks about recommending priorities and never says anything about there needing to be 3 tiers or there needing to be a rigid list. I think one of the things that got lost in the rigid list and the 3-tier priority was protection of communities, and a real priority was instead toward urban areas. But urban areas, the Delta is mostly rural, and urban areas have other sources of flood funding. And so there's the real danger of cutting out areas that are important to protect rural communities, as well as to protect water supplies and other critical infrastructure in the Delta that levees are so important for. So I think also the statute 85306 does say consult with the flood board, and I think that could be much more robust than I understand it was, and I encourage council and staff to take that mandate seriously. And also it needs to be, whatever the council comes up with, needs to be consistent with the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan. A lot of thought was already put into how we could protect our whole region from flooding and what we needed to do going forward, and having the council do something different and not be fully integrated with that work product is counterproductive. So anyway, we look forward to trying to engage with council and staff on developing a better approach to levy investment priority, and I would just encourage folks to be flexible in thinking about all the different ways in which that could be improved, and using the work that's been done, but also maybe looking beyond just the issue of the LIDAR, because I think there's a lot more areas of improvement than just that. Thank you.
Thank you, OSHA. Council members, any questions for OSHA Meserve?
Susan, this is Randy. A couple of thoughts and a question. One, I believe legacy communities are part of our prioritization. So the reference to rural communities probably is not on the mark. The question I have, OSHA, for you, are you aware of any funding submissions last year for the subventions program that were denied?
That wouldn't really be something that I would know, but I think Gilbert answered you. But I guess I just don't really think that's the relevant question. DWR came in the fall and told you guys that they didn't follow, that they weren't able to, and they didn't follow your recommendations. So it's kind of irrelevant.
I guess, well,
the point is why make a rigid list when it has to be overridden each and every time? And with respect to the rural communities, yes, they're on the list, but the way that 3-tiered priority looked in the slide we looked at a little bit earlier, urban's on top, and that's what I'm objecting to.
Well, that's fine, but the statute says that we are to consider state interests, and so the valuation of the risk is part of the prioritization process. But it is relevant to know whether or not DWR rejected any submissions for funding requests, because it suggests that DLIS is not restricting, at least in this last year, and we still haven't received confirmation about whether or not a request was denied. I don't think there were any. That's why I keep asking.
We lost out on flood control insurance backing from the federal government as a result of potentially the DLIS system,
That's
which
not true.
Prioritized.
That's not true.
Well,
that's not true.
And the state investments, in addition, just to follow up on that, the state investments are a lot of different things, right? It's the water supply, it's your power supply, your road system, your trains, all that kind of stuff going through the Delta. So again, I mean, you know, I think there's good work there, but I think that it could take a fresh look and try to make it more integrated with all these other priorities, and I think you can easily still meet the statutory mandate in doing that.
Well, I think the items that you mentioned are considered in part of the prioritization process, and it does not appear that DLIS has prevented anyone from receiving funding that was ready to proceed with a project.
Okay, are there any other questions for Ocean Reserve council members? If not, thank you, OSHA, for taking the time to be with us today.
Chair Tatayan, this is Lita. I have one more comment.
Okay, go ahead, Lita.
This comment is from Bill Darcy from KSN Engineers, and it reads, KSN Engineers fully supports comments made by Gil Cosio. KSN represents about 40% of the Delta Reclamation Districts. End comment.
Thank you, Lita. Well, if there are no further public comments, council members, are we ready to address the requested staff action?
I move we adopt Resolution 2020-01.
Fiorini, seconds.
Okay, motion by Damrell, second by Fiorini. Any council discussion? All right, if not, then we'll go ahead with the vote. Damrell.
Damrell, aye.
Fiorini.
Fiorini, aye.
Gatto.
Gatto, aye.
Maranian.
Maranian, aye.
Villegas.
Aye.
Weinberg.
Weinberg, aye.
And Tatayan, aye. Staff's requested action and recommendation to adopt Resolution 2020-01 is approved.
Thank you, Chair Tatayan, and thank you to the staff for those presentations. With that, are we ready to move on to item 10?
Yes.
Okay. With the action just taken, the council's contract with Stantec Consulting Services needs to be amended for continued support to staff in updating the technical analysis for DLIS. In addition, staff is seeking additional support for the development and ultimate finalization of the ecosystem amendment to the Delta Plan, which Stantec also supports through the current contract. As a result, I'm asking for your authority to amend the contract with Stantec by increasing the contract budget by up to an additional $960,000 for a total of $6,010,000. The contract is set to expire on March 31st, 2021. With that, I'll hand it to Jeff Henderson to see if he has additional context to add.
Thank you, Jessica. I'll be very brief. We just finished discussing the DLIS component of this amendment, and again, the amendment has two parts. One essentially is related to the Delta Levees investment strategy work that we just discussed. The other is continued support for the ecosystem amendment to the Delta Plan. This is predominantly to help us complete the California Environmental Quality Act process for that project. The existing task order for that work was initially approved by the council based on an estimate developed under earlier assumptions without the context of the policies, the recommendations, and the performance measures that are now, that were recently made available for public review, and staff is in the process of preparing to bring back before the council. Furthermore, with the recently implemented document accessibility guidelines, we required some additional work beyond that was anticipated in the original contract to post the ecosystem amendment CEQA documents on the council's website. So these are the primary reasons why additional resources would be required to complete that task. So what the staff recommends is authorizing the executive officer to amend the contract with Stantec, again increasing the contract budget by $960,000 for continued support on these items. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay. Yes, Ken.
Ken, yeah, just a question. Going back to one of the slide staff, I think Aaron presented, we're looking at kind of wrapping up the D-list work spring 2021, and I think Jessica said the contract expires in March 2021. Is there work going to be done at that point? Or are we thinking this is going to go beyond March?
Councilmember Weinberg, in response to that question, and obviously considering some of the current events that we are all working through, I think the staff would be amenable to considering an alternative expiration date of December 2021 to provide a little bit extra cushion to get these work items moving forward and enable the completion of both the D-list and the ecosystem amendment. So we're open from a staff perspective to extending that contract through December, and I've also verified that our funding streams would allow us to do that.
Okay, well that seems a little more seamless in recognizing what the situation is. So. Let's see, I think, if I make a motion to move the staff recommendation and, within the $960,000 not to exceed amount, and amend the expiration date or extend the contract date to December 31st, 2021.
Okay, thank you.
I said that correctly.
Ken. I think so. Before we take, is there, hello?
Yes.
We have council members, we have a motion before us. Any discussion? Is there a second to Member Weinberg's motion?
Second.
Damrell seconds. Is there any public comment on this item, Lita?
There's no public comment for this item.
Okay, thank you. So then we'll proceed with the vote. Motion by Weinberg, second by Damrell. Starting with Judge Damrell.
Damrell, aye.
Fiorini.
Fiorini, aye.
Gatto.
Gatto, aye.
Maranian.
Maranian, aye.
Villegas.
Aye.
Weinberg.
Weinberg, aye.
Fatayan, aye. Staff recommended action is approved.
Thank you very much for your support.
Thank you. Thank you for all the hard work, Jeff. On to agenda item 11. Do we have any public comment in general, Lita?
There's no additional public comment on any other item.
Thanks, Lita. Then on to agenda item 12. I want to thank everyone for participating remotely today and understanding the necessity to do this. I want to thank the audio and visual team, our meeting services team, our IT team, and the council staff. Given the situation, I think we'll probably be having our next meeting remotely. The next council meeting is scheduled for April 30, 2020. And I wish you all good health and well-being and look forward to our April 30.
Susan, I really think that we owe debt of gratitude and to thank Jessica and her entire staff, because I know there's been other issues that have arisen with other agencies, and we apparently have had very little of those issues thanks to the staff and Jessica's leadership. I think it's amazing that we've seamlessly moved to a teleremote meeting without any apparent glitches. So I do think we owe a debt of gratitude to Jessica and the staff.
Yes, I agree completely.
Thank you, Judge.
Well, with that, thank you, everyone. I look forward to talking with you again soon. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.